Hello everyone, this is Caleb Simpson, and you are watching my walkthrough for Chrono Trigger for Nintendo DS. This video covers the second half of the Black Omen, which takes place just after you get to that room with the news up until after the Queen Zeal fights. Now actually after that point we immediately go into the first parts of the Lavos fights. However, you can also get to the Lavos fights using a variety of different methods, and the Black Omen is just one of those possible options. So the next video is going to be the beginning of the Lavos fights, and I'm going to show the various methods to get there, including the Black Omen route. Meanwhile, this video is going to cover all of the Black Omen stuff exclusively, so that's why it's going to end at that point. So anyways, yes, this video covers the second half of the Black Omen after we get to the new room, and then ends after all of the Queen Zeal fights. Now just after you leave the new room, you'll then encounter a new enemy called a Blubber Hulk, otherwise known as a Tubster. Now these enemies can be charmed to get strength capsules, which is very useful, so you should definitely do that, so I'd highly recommend you fight them with Ayla. And then otherwise, they do actually hit pretty hard, so I'd recommend you take them out as soon as possible. They do absorb shadow, so just be warned of that, and they are more susceptible to fire. They have quite a bit of health, but they can be killed pretty easily. Just use something really hard-hitting, you can take care of them right away. Just make sure you charm them first. Quick disclaimer for those of you who are just watching this video, I explained in the last video that this whole walkthrough I did do like all the side quests and got all the equipment and everything, so I have there's a bunch of cool stuff you can do at the end of the game, and lots of optional content, and your characters will grow in level quite a bit. So my main playthrough, I'm actually like in the 55 to 58 level range. Meanwhile, what I'm showing right now is actually a different playthrough where I'm lower level, so my characters are like 42, 43, so they're significantly lower, and I don't have all those really good equipment from all the character-specific side quests. The equipment is like one of the biggest things that allows you to survive in the Black Omen, so I don't have any of that. So I'm trying to show like how to do this hard mode. Because if somebody did want to come here early, they're going to need some good strategies to be able to survive these boss battles. So that's what I'm trying to show. So that being said, the characters you're seeing on screen are currently like in their 40s, early 40s, and that means that this is going to be significantly harder for me, and I'm going to show you how that's not only that's possible, but you can do that very well. Part of the thought there too is like if you can do it in hard mode like this, then you can certainly do it with really good equipment, but I'm just trying to show good strategies so you can see how to accomplish this even with a not ideal team. One of the biggest things you're going to need is going to be status immunity, and how I did this is I charmed some Nova armor off of Fang Beast and got a couple in chest to put on all my guys. I also got Vigilant helms that I put on Marl and Luca, and then meanwhile I have Shala's amulet on Ayla. So as a result, I have status immunity on all the characters in my entire party. Status immunity is one of the biggest things you need to survive in the Black Omen, and those Cybots that I just fought a moment ago are good examples of that. They have a pretty nasty ability that applies chaos, I believe. I think it might just be random status effects. I think it's just chaos, but regardless, it's really bad, and it can just totally destroy you. So having status immunity is what will protect you from that. Now, up ahead in this room, there is a chest in the top left corner. You need to get past these Hydrocondas / Ruminators in order to do that. They can be charmed for Mega Elixirs, just be careful, because these guys can one-shot your characters. Now, generally speaking, it feels to me like they always attack each other first. They'll attack random targets. So 2 snakes will kill the other 2 snakes, and you don't know which ones those are going to be. But as long as you kill them just after that, then you should be fine. So you should be able to charm at least 2, if not 3, Mega Elixirs very easily off this combat, and I would highly recommend you do that because Mega Elixirs are very valuable. So like I say, this is probably a very risky strategy. However, it's always seemed to work out for me, but maybe I'm crazy though. I don't know, it could be just chance though, and I just happen to be lucky, but this is how it's always worked out for me. Once you've defeated them, you can go ahead and open the nearby chest to get a Zodiac Cape. This is a pretty nice female-only chest piece that will give you a whole bunch of magic defense, and actually is very useful for some of the bosses up ahead, because just a little bit of magic defense makes a huge difference, because if you can get 10 magic defense on a chest piece, and 10 magic defense on like an accessory, and maybe even 10 magic defense on a headpiece as well in Luca's case, then you can have some pretty serious immunity to magic. Like, you reduce the damage of magic by all the way up to like 90%. It's crazy how much it helps. Of course, if you're high enough level, then your stats start capping out, and magic defense is actually one of the first things that gets capped out on all of your characters anyways. It stops at 99, so once you get 99, you'll start saying, like, star is what it'll say, or asterisk, and that means that it's capped out. So anyways, once you get to that point, then the Zodiac Cape is no longer very useful. In particular, I would say it's most useful on Ayla because she has the lowest magic defense of our females, and so that would be a very useful thing for her, at least up until she gets it maxed out anyway. So for me in these particular recordings, I need 1 more Nova armor in order to have Robo have status immunity as well, so I'm going to go ahead and charm these guys right here because they can be charmed to get Nova armors, which is super nice. I actually forgot in this recording that I got one back in the new room, so I only needed 1 more, but I went ahead and charmed the other one too because I couldn't quite remember. But these Fang Beasts are super annoying. They get my vote for the most annoying enemy in this whole area because they hit really hard, and they're just awful. Like, I like to take care of them as soon as possible, so the easiest way to do that is to use fire damage. and if you can hit them really, really hard, then you can take care of them in one shot. So they do absorb light and shadow, so that's one thing that's awkward about them, so it means that you can't really take them out super fast with a lot of other character combinations. One of the best abilities, in my opinion, is going to be to use Inferno between Ayla and Luca. The damage of this is primarily based off of Ayla's magic stats, so giving her a little bit of magic makes a huge difference. I'll be showing this in some of the battles later on in this video, but yes, very powerful ability. So once that combat is complete, be sure to open up the chest that was behind one of the Fang Beasts to get a Mega Elixir, and then after that I'm going to go ahead and toss on the Nova Armor on my remaining guys that don't have him equipped, and now all of my characters should have Nova Armor, so they all have status immunity. So I showed this in the last video, but there's several fights where you can see these Watchers / Boss Orbs, as well as Nomads / Sidekicks, and these enemies they always cast Omnilock, so you can't actually use any techs or items. One thing you can do to kind of make this combat a little bit easier is you can just go ahead and put on some Berserker Rings, and then your characters will just attack whatever really fast. This also increases your defense a little bit. I don't know that it really matters in this particular case. These enemies can have, the Watchers anyways, have a fire attack, which can hurt really bad. But generally speaking, most of these combats, you'll just kill everything really fast anyways, so you probably won't take any damage. This can be a potentially good way to get some XP by just running back and forth, so if you need some TP, especially to unlock some remaining abilities before we tackle the last bosses of the game, this would be a good way to do it. So I'm just having Berserker Rings on all my characters, and if I just leave through that south exit and come right back up, all these enemies will reappear. I definitely don't think this is like the best place or the fastest place to get XP in the game or anything like that, but we are towards the end, and so if you're trying to get some more TP so you can unlock some remaining abilities before we get to the final bosses of the game, this is a pretty safe place to do it. That's low maintenance. You can just kind of like chill and do something else in the meantime and just keep walking back and forth. That's like all you have to do. You just win. In the next room, grab the nearby Power Crest. I honestly don't really feel like it's a super useful item, but you can totally grab it if you wish. Up ahead, we do have another one of those Tubsters / Blubber Hulks. Now these guys, remember, you can charm them in order to get a Strength Capsule / Tab. Or Strength Capsule / Power Tab. So that's a very useful thing. You should totally grab this. Now this is one of the few like capsule things that do reappear in the Black Omen. Most of the other things, there's only a finite amount of them, like particularly the Alien / Gage later. There's only one of those, or like one fight that has those pretty much, but like and they don't reappear. Meanwhile, these guys do. This is one of the only combats that does. So you can go back up through the North Room and come back and keep stealing it over and over again. However, just so you know, like, power is very easy to max out on most of your characters. The only two characters that kind of lag behind a little bit, and it takes a little while, is actually going to be Magus and Frog. But it doesn't really help them so much. Like, Magus is more of a spellcaster, and meanwhile, Frog is more reliant on his weapon damage, actually, than his strength stat. So yes, increasing his strength does help, but he doesn't get as much benefit out of it. So anyways, I don't really feel like it's super worthwhile to farm for strength, but it'd be much more worthwhile if you could farm for magic, but you can't really do that very well. So anyway, just something to keep in mind. In the far bottom right corner of this room, though, there is a chest containing a speed capsule. Make sure you grab that. That would be very handy. Now, just so you know, these Martellos, these turret-looking things, they oftentimes, a lot of these guys will actually only start combat when they look at you. So they actually slowly rotate around, and when they're facing towards you, that's when it initiates combat. So you can sneak around them pretty easily, but I don't really think it's that big of a deal to fight this particular combat. The one annoying thing is the Cybot does have some nasty status effects, so if you don't have status immunity right now, that can be a problem. In the next room, open up the nearby chest to get a speed capsule / tab, which is awesome, and then in the next room you have our second portal, which will take us onward in the dungeon. This leads to a very large room where we have some pretty nasty enemies to deal with. These new enemies are called a Narble / Blob, which can be charmed to get a magic ring, which I don't really think that's super worth it, and they will absorb shadow damage, so make sure you're just using an element other than shadow. They're actually weak to water, but I don't really think that matters too much. Ideally, you just do enough damage to kill them outright. Just be warned, though, that if you don't hit them hard enough, if you use a magic attack, they have a magic counter that will absorb all of your MP on the target that cast it on them. So, you just want to make sure you do enough damage to finish them outright. Then otherwise, we also have Gage / Aliens, and they're the opposite, where they have a death physical counter. So if you use any kind of physical ability on them at all, they will hit you with this ability as a counter that has a very high chance to kill you instantly. Use a magic attack on them, however, this does not cause this. So what you want to do is you want to charm the Aliens / Gages to get magic capsules / tabs, which would be super useful, so I highly recommend you charm them. I would ignore the Narbles because, for a couple reasons, they'll suck up all your MP, but also the magic ring just isn't super worth it. If you kill them, they'll give you a barrier ring, though. So the best thing to do for this battle is make sure you charm the Aliens / Gages, and then follow up with a magic attack, something other than Shadow. So lightning, water, or fire. The Narbles are weak to water, but if you do enough damage with whatever element you choose, as long as it's not shadow anyways, you'll instantly kill everything on the screen. So I'd recommend like a dual tech with Luca, because that's the easiest thing. She just does so much fire damage that everything just gets pwned by her. So like, Luca is just so good for this whole dungeon. She's just really good. In the far bottom left corner, we have an elixir. Make sure you grab that, then head through the middle. Here we have some more of those Watcher/boss orbs and sidekicks/nomads, I think they're called. Anyways, these guys are annoying, but just kill them if you wish. It's just free XP. You have to actually inspect the sidekick/nomads in order to initiate this particular combat, but it's not hard or anything. Again, the little guys here, according to the bestiary anyway, can supposedly be charmed to get speed capsule/tabs as well. However, I don't think it's possible to go fast enough to evade that Omnilock. Like if you have the haste buff on a haste helm or Angel's Tiara, plus a whole bunch of maxed out speed, you're still not fast enough. In fact, even if you have access to your tab before Omnilock is cast, you can't actually press it, which doesn't make any sense to me. So I have no idea if it's possible. I don't even know why they have a charmable if they're never in a position where you can charm them. Maybe there's like one enemy somewhere in the game where they're by themselves, but I don't think so. I think they're only here on the Black Omen. But anyway, it irritates me. I don't even know why they include that information if it's not possible to do it. Like, what? Maybe they changed their mind partway through, or like, I don't know. Maybe it's just like leftovers from something else, but it just feels strange that they quite specifically have something you can charm and yet you can't charm them. One obscure strategy that might work is if you let somebody die on purpose. So you can't use items, you would not be able to use a Athenian water/revive, but you can use accessories. So if you have Ayla equipped with the Green Dream, which is an accessory that you get from Fiona's side quest, and that will allow you to die and resurrect automatically once per combat. So if you put that on Ayla, and then you enter that combat with the Watcher/boss orb almost dead, it uses Omnilock at the start of combat, and then after that it just keeps using this fire attack that hits all the characters on the screen. So if you let it kill Ayla on purpose, and then she dies, she instantly resurrects, I think that would clear all the status effects, so she would no longer be Omnilocked, I think. I'm actually not 100% sure about that. But then she could go ahead and charm all of the nomads/sidekicks until they escape anyways. That's the only ability they have. They escape automatically after a certain time has passed. So anyways, if you would be able to get a whole bunch of speed capsule/tabs that way. It's a really obscure strategy, very specific, but if you wanted to charm more speed capsule/tabs, or you destroyed all the panels because you didn't realize you could charm them, that would be a way you could kind of circumvent that. I'm actually not 100% sure that this strategy works. It's very obscure, very specific, but maybe. So just, if anybody could test that, or if you know of any other bright ideas on how we could accomplish this, then let me know in the comments. It'd be cool to share with the group. Anyways, up ahead there is some more of those Gadge/aliens. Make sure you charm them for magic capsule/tabs, and then open up the remaining chests that are in that room, and then continue on towards the next area. Here we have a sparkly where we can save and use some shelters. Be sure to do that before we face off against Giga Mutant, which is the second boss of the Black Omen. This boss is pretty easy. In order to survive, the biggest thing that would help is having status immunity, so definitely put on Shala's Amulet or Vigilant Helms or Nova Armor on the guys anyways. In my case, I'm going to be using the girls because I want to charm and I also want to do magic damage. The reason for this is because this boss has a very high physical resistance, so if I use the guys and I'm using abilities like, Confuse/Frenzy, for example, or Rapid Fire Fist, or like X-Strike or something like that, it's just not very good. It does okay, it just, this boss blocks so much of that damage that magic damage is so much better. Also, when we're using magic damage, you can hit the whole screen, so you're doing damage to both of the parts at the same time. It makes this battle really, really fast, actually. So you don't have to worry about it too much. The only other thing worth noting about this boss is it actually does mostly magic damage, so magic defense is going to be the biggest thing that will help you, and in particular, lightning damage. It has a very nasty single-target lightning ability that hits really, really hard. It can potentially take out most of your life in one shot, so you either want to make sure that you're always full health all the time to counter that, or you want to put on a bunch of magic defense. So just having an accessory like the barrier/wall ring on, for example, on one of your characters will help a lot to negate a lot of that potential damage. Or like that Zodiac cape that we got earlier, for example. If I put that on Ayla, that will definitely make her more capable of surviving Shining Sphere. Alternatively, because that's the biggest threat, if you put the white plate on whoever has the lowest magic defense, in this case Ayla, then that would help quite a bit. So white plate would be the thing that would absorb light attacks instead, and that would allow us to survive this much better. Now this boss does do some physical damage though, so having plate as opposed to vest would be nice. So the white vest might be a little bit risky, but again, the lightning attack just hits so much harder that I think it's still worth it. It's worth sacrificing a little bit of physical defense in order to get that magic defense instead. Now, as far as charming goes, I would highly recommend that you charm the top half for the barrier/wall ring off of this boss, because in order to survive the Lavos battles up ahead, ideally you need at least 80 magic defense. That's kind of the point of entry, I would say, is the threshold in order to be able to survive his first volley of attacks. So as long as you have 80 magic defense, you're pretty much good to go. You have 80 magic defense and status immunity is what you need to survive the Lavos fights. So if you have 70 or less or something, having it boosted just a little bit with an accessory like that is what you need in order to be able to accomplish it. And conveniently, this boss gives you exactly that kind of item, which is exactly what we need as we're on our way to Lavos. Quite thoughtful of him, honestly. Now, as an alternative for this particular boss fight, if you don't want to use magic damage for this, or you want to use a different team composition, I'd recommend Ayla and Frog, because they have Slurp Kiss. So if you have like a Nova Armor on Frog for status immunity, and you have the Shala's Amulet on Ayla for status immunity, then the two of them can use Slurp Kiss, especially if you gave some magic capsule/tabs to Ayla. Slurp Kiss will heal amazingly. In fact, if you get Ayla up to 35 magic, then she will full heal the entire party at that point, which is great. So if you give her a whole bunch of magic capsule/tabs, Slurp Kiss becomes awesome. But it also removes status effects. So if you have like a third slot be like Magus, for example, he can be using Dark Matter to fight the boss, and then whenever something nasty happens, you just use Frog and Ayla's Slurp Kiss dual tech. It will heal the entire party, it will remove the status effect on Magus so that he can keep fighting. Yeah, and it just does both those things at the same time, which is great. You don't have to worry about using like, Panacea/heals. You can just use Slurp Kiss and you heal and remove the status effect at the same time. It's great. I would encourage you not to underestimate the power of having your third slot just using a single tech that's really expensive, so like that hits the whole screen. So Flare or Luminaire or Dark Matter or even Electrocute with Robo. Any of those kind of abilities, if you give them a gold stud, they're not really all that expensive, and they can just kill the boss by themselves. The only problem is just they need like other people to keep them alive. So if you have like Ayla and Frog completely just dedicated 100% to doing like Slurp Kiss, then what happens is you're actually just, it doesn't matter, because if the boss only has like 6,000 life, and you're doing like over 1,000 or like 1,500 with one character every single turn, it means that at 6 turns max, you win that boss battle. It just is over. And Slurp Kiss only costs 1 MP each, so it costs 2 MP total. It's like nothing. It's super cheap. And you just guaranteed to stay alive and win. It's just, I don't know, there's nothing they can do. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? You have more than enough MP to survive. As long as you have status immunity and you're healing enough, then there's no way you can die. It's impossible. It's kind of funny because like characters like Magus, for example, like he's just kind of so-so, but you can totally just win doing like, I don't know, you're just using like lightning too. It's not his best ability at all, but it doesn't matter because he can't die. And so like eventually you're gonna win. That's all kind of assuming though that you're using magic damage though. If you're using physical, then it gets a little bit more awkward. So somebody like Chrono who can at least alternate back and forth and do both. He can do Luminaire or he can do Frenzy/Confuse. At least he has options at that point. Once you defeat Giga Mutant, you want to enter the next portal, which will take us to an elevator, and this is fairly rough. There's a bunch of battles in a row where you don't really have a lot of time in between, but again, you can charm the snakes if you want to hopefully get some Mega Elixir, super worthwhile, and then otherwise you're going to need some status immunity to be able to survive the Cybots. Otherwise, the elevator's pretty self-explanatory. I just kind of skimmed over that, nothing really much to say. In the next room, we have some of these sync rights, again, which is not a big deal. There's some Fang Beasts. Ideally, kill the Fang Beast as soon as possible. But then right after that, we have some more of those Blubber Hulks/Tubster. Make sure that you charm them in order to get some Strength Capsules/Tabs. One thing, by the way, I forgot to mention earlier is the fact that these Tubsters/Blubber Hulks, they have a pretty nasty counterattack, which is a physical slap counterattack. It does it with everything, though, so no matter what you use, as long as you don't do enough damage, then they will counterattack every time, and it hurts pretty bad, actually. So what you want to do is just hit them hard enough that you kill them with one attack. So whatever you want to use, you can use a dual tech or a triple tech or whatever, but just make sure that whatever you use, you take them out. Use a really hard-hitting attack, and that's the best way to survive them. I find it really sad that we can only farm Strength Capsule/Power Tabs here on the Black Omen, because that's kind of the only one we don't actually need. The guys actually cap out on those pretty fast, and then meanwhile, like, Luca and Marl don't matter for that at all. It's completely irrelevant for them. But then meanwhile, like, we can't farm magic tabs, and that's the ones we would really like. The capsule, I think the speed is the most valuable. That's the thing that's the most important, and there is actually enough to just barely get all your characters completely maxed out if you get all of the capsule/tabs in the game. It's like just perfect. Otherwise, you have to go into New Game Plus. They're all like finite amounts. But Strength is the only one you can get repeatedly. I thought that, I don't know, I just thought that you could get magic repeatedly, but you can't. The only way to do it is to go into New Game Plus and like go through the game again, basically, because all of them are event-specific or finite numbers of them that are from very specific enemies. But yeah, it's like magic is the one that is going to take a very long time to get on all of our characters, in particular like Robo and Ayla. It takes them a long time to cap out on those things. So if we could get more magic tabs, that would really help a lot, and yet we don't have that option. So as far as I know, the only way to farm magic capsules successfully is to go into New Game Plus. What that means is you fight Lavos, you start over a new file, and then you keep all your stuff from your previous game. Then you rush to get to the end of time as soon as possible. You fight Specchio again, then you go to the bucket to fight Lavos immediately. So then you just once again go over to New Game Plus again. Now if you can get a couple like along the way, like in Medina and stuff like that, so I think you end up with something like 11 magic capsules / tabs, depending on which form of Lavos, or depending on which form of Specchio you're fighting, depending on what your level is. But you can get his capsule set, or whatever they call it, and you'll get a whole bunch of them. So that would also give you some speed as well. At his max level variant, so that's nice. But anyways, yeah, as far as I know, that's the only way to farm for magic capsule / tabs. In this next room, I panicked because I realized I forgot to heal Ayla before I entered. I thought that I would have a little bit of time, before, like at the entrance, before I actually initiated this combat, but it happened as soon as I entered, so I was panicking here, trying to heal her real quick. But yes, just make sure you take your time and take this nice and slow and make sure that you successfully charm each one of these panels, because these are a one-time only fight and you can charm speed capsules / tabs off them. Super, super valuable. Honestly, I think speed is like one of the biggest things in this game that makes me feel strong. Like it makes such a big difference, especially on enemies like Specchio, for example, where he hits really hard. As long as you can heal every time that he's doing damage, you guarantee that you can't die. So it just helps a lot. It makes such a big difference. Also with Specchio too, by the way, like now we're starting to get to the point where we have like some really good, helmets that will have elemental damage. So what you can do is, which is kind of fun, is like, say Luca, for example, she resists fire damage, right? Speaking of Specchio, since we were just talking about it a moment ago. So Luca just passively resists 20% of fire damage. So if you give her like a blue plate, so she absorbs water, right? And then she's wearing like the radiant helm, so that she will have light damage. So that when all being said, what that means is that she's reducing elemental damage by quite a bit. Now this is of course assuming that you don't have the elemental Aegis, that would be a super good Aegis. That will be a super good item that will make her completely immune to all elemental damage, so she'd be amazing for Specchio in that case, but in her specific case. I'll be showing that in a couple of videos from now, but that's one of the best items for Luca ever. It's super amazing. Really good item. So once you've destroyed them, go ahead and open the nearby chest to get a speed capsule / tab, and then use the nearby sparkly to throw some shelters on your characters and heal up and save if you like. Now next we have a boss right around the corner. This is Tera Mutant. Even though we did just face Giga Mutant not that long ago, we already have the next one. Now just so you know, Mega Mutant at the entrance and Giga Mutant were very similar, but Tera Mutant is quite different, so this fight does not go the same way as the previous ones. It is a little bit harder, but also the mechanics are slightly different. Now the biggest thing you're going to need to know about this is have status immunity. That would help a lot. And then otherwise, you want to do you want to have a team composition of either really hard-hitting full-screen magic damage or have really hard-hitting single-target physical. So those are the two things you need to know ahead of time as far as preparing for this fight properly. Because this boss looks so similar to the previous ones, like, players just assume that this boss fights the exact same as the previous ones, but that is not the case at all. In fact, they're trying to trick you with that on purpose and just try to feed into your assumptions on how this battle works. For the previous two fights, you had to destroy both halves in order to defeat the boss. In this particular case, though, if you defeat the top half, which has significantly less health, then you just win. Then both halves are defeated. You don't have to fight the bottom half at all. However, the way it's designed makes it seem like you're supposed to. In fact, the top half will keep life stealing off the bottom half, and so as a result, it feels like the boss won't die until the bottom half is defeated. So that you have to focus on that because that's the healer, which would be true in a lot of fights, but that is not the case here. The bottom half has a pretty nasty Life Shaver attack, which is a physical counter, so if you use anything that's pure physical damage, then this can be really bad. Like, for example, I think one of the only attacks that could probably hit both at the same time that's pure physical would be like Falcon Strike, for example. So you did that, then it would guarantee a counter, but otherwise all of the attacks have to pretty much be direct in order for it to function with a physical attack anyways. But yeah, if you use a physical attack on the lower half, which is the only way you can deal damage to it, then this will cause it to use the Life Shaver counter, which will set your HP to 1. You want to make sure you have a healer ready to counter that if you really want to go that route. But yeah, killing the lower half is completely irrelevant. It doesn't matter. You don't have to do that. So instead, just focus on the top half. Now again, because elemental attacks will just cause the lower half to be healed, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't change anything. We don't have to kill the lower half. So just use hard-hitting magic attacks. You'll do a ton of damage to the top half, and the lower half doesn't do anything, so it doesn't matter. So just keep bashing away at the top half with the hardest-hitting magic attacks you have. It'll keep healing and stuff, but as long as you just keep firing away at it, you will win eventually. It keeps healing, but as long as you're dealing more damage, yeah. If it heals like 1,000 damage every turn. As long as you're doing more than 1,000, or at least a good 2,000 damage, you can guarantee that you will do enough damage to overcome the healing that is getting over time. In some ways, this fight is very similar to the Mother Brain fight that we fought in Genodome, where you had to do a bunch of single target physical damage just to Mother Brain in order to not make the panels attack you. It's kind of like that, except it's the opposite. We're using multi-target damage to make sure that the lower half doesn't attack us, which is kind of weird. It's such an interesting concept because it's the exact opposite of what you would expect, I guess, which I think is actually really cool because it just feels very different. By the way, the two charmables off that boss are a Muscle Ring and a Power Crest / Seal, and I think both of those items are pretty bad, so I'd actually recommend that you just ignore them. It's not worth it. Next, return to the Sparkly, go ahead and shelter up and save, and then you can continue on towards the north. Now, as we go across this bridge, you'll then immediately encounter the next boss, which is the Elder Lavos spawn. Now, this is very similar to the Lavos spawns that we saw on Death Peak if you completed Chrono side quest. Very similar to that, but it's a much more powered up version of it that does similar things. Now, one of the main differences is the fact that it does shadow damage rather than fire, so I'd highly recommend whatever team you're going to bring, it might be smart to wear Black Plate, would help quite a bit. Now, otherwise, as far as characters, remember, as a reminder, you don't want to hit the shell, so you need to use really hard-hitting single target attacks. This boss does a lot of physical damage in general, so using the guys and Ayla in particular would be a little bit smarter just because they're not going to take anywhere near as much damage, both because they have more armor, but in particular because their stamina / vigor stat is so much higher. Another thing you can do to reduce damage further is you can wear Dark Helms. This would be on characters that are currently not wearing plates, so if you don't have enough black plates, you can put the black plates on like girls if you're going to have any of them with you, and then have the helms on the guys because Dark Helms can only be worn by dudes, and that will reduce incoming shadow damage by 50%. Ideally, you put those kind of items on characters that are not shadow elements, so other than Magus and Robo, you want to put like those kind of plates, whatever, on characters other than them because they already reduced shadow damage quite a bit already. As far as other damage too, this boss does a little bit of water damage, not very much, so you could wear the Mermaid Helm on one of your characters too, although I think the Guardian Helm would be a lot smarter because even though, yeah, a lot of the other attacks are physical, so Guardian Helm would help a lot / Safe Helm. Speaking of which, one of the things you can do is charm the shell to get a Guardian / Safe Helm. That'd be a super valuable thing. I highly recommend you grab that because having multiple of those is super nice, in particular going into New Game Plus 2, as well as some of the future boss battles we're going to be facing. As far as recommended characters for this particular section, I would just recommend anybody other than Magus and Luca. They're pretty bad for this because they just, a lot of their attacks tend to focus on multi-target, so the problem is they'll hit the shell and it causes the counter-attack. Now, I did actually end up charming the shell of Lavos, of the Lavos Elder Spawn, because I wanted the Guardian / Safe Helm. Really, really good. I'm actually kind of surprised that it did kill Ayla. She had a lot of defenses, but apparently it still wasn't enough. So yeah, just be warned of that. She probably would have survived if I had given her like the Guardian Helm, for example. And it also might have been smart for me to go ahead and have Chrono, instead of having him attack the head, if I had just stalled with him and used him to use a Athenian Water / Survive, and then immediately follow up with a heal with Frog, I might have been able to survive this next attack rather than having to res her again. If you're high enough level, this counter shouldn't kill you, although, again, though, if you're really high level, then all these bosses are kind of a cakewalk anyways. You'd be amazed, like, just how much difference having a little bit more stamina / vigor and magic defense makes in all these fights. It's just crazy. Part of that is to the equipment, too. Like, having really high armor makes these physical attacks not hit so hard. But yeah, it's not too bad that she died. It's like, whatever. If I wanted to survive that, another couple things I could have done is just wear, like, the Muscle Ring on Ayla, which would increase her stamina / vigor. We actually could have charmed that earlier, and I was saying it was kind of a garbage item. One of the reasons I was saying that, though, too, is the fact that I already have some in my inventory, so if I really wanted to, I could have used it, but I haven't used it this entire playthrough, and I don't really think it's super important. It does, I mean, again, every piece of that stat you can add does actually significantly reduce damage you take. So if you know ahead of time what type of element the enemy is going to be using, you can counteract it pretty easily and it works great. What would be more effective than that, though, it just in general would be to wear the Guardian Helm. If I put that on Ayla, then she would survive this a lot better when she was hitting the shell. I should have done that probably instead. Something else you can do with these this fight in general, just all these fights here at these last boss battles, is if you use a Lapis on all of your characters, it heals for 200, but if you have all 3 characters use a Lapis for a turn, then what that means is you'll heal everybody like 600, which is pretty good. That's a decent amount, so if everybody's pretty hurt, that's a good way to do that. One of the really cool attacks that these guys have is a triple attack tech that is called 3D attack, and it's super strong. Like, I think that a lot of people don't really use it very much, but it's one of the highest damaging techs that we have in the game. It has one of the highest multipliers, but it's straight up physical and it does really good damage. It's just a nice ability. One of the reasons why I think that's cool is because this team composition, you don't really have a lot of magic damage at all. You have Chrono has a little bit that you can use, especially if you're using Lightning Spire or Thunder Chomp. They're both really good single target abilities that have some lightning damage. But yeah, basically this team composition is all about target or full party healing, and then as well as single target damage is what they're focused on, and they do a really good job for that. So it's just a very safe defensive team because you're guaranteed to do solid damage and you can overwhelm the enemy, because a lot of times it's usually easier to get over the damage thresholds with physical damage than it is with magical damage for a lot of enemies, is what I find. So this team, it's not necessarily the highest physical damage in the world, but it's a very solid choice and they're really safe. In the next room we have 5 more panels. Make sure you charm them because you don't want to let this opportunity to go to waste, because if you charm them you'll get speed capsule / tabs, so just make sure you do that. Super important. So to that end I put on the black plate on all of my girls, and I also put on haste helms on Marl and Ayla, so this way they can charm as fast as possible. Now remember that these guys will do missiles which do physical damage to single target, otherwise they have a dual tech that they can do with other ones that are present. But really, it's not just technically a dual tech, it's just a ability they can use only if there's more than one panel. And what that does is it does shadow damage. Even though it's like a lightning graphic or whatever, it's totally shadow damage. So the black plate will heal them instead. Alright, we're gonna kind of rewind as far as events in this game for a moment. Earlier we got the white gemstone, and I didn't have time to talk about it before, and that is a accessory you can put on one of your characters, on one of these girls, and it gives them a triple tech called the Poyoza Dance. What that does is it does neutral damage. One of the funny things about it is I think it even cuts through all defenses and stuff, both magical and physical, I think is how it works. But I don't really use it very much. The damage on it is actually kind of garbage, but funny thing to know about it is it does damage to enemies that you normally would not be able to attack. For example, Cyrus's ghost in Frog Side Quest, you can actually attack it using that tech. There's no particular reason to do that, it's just interesting to point out, but it's one of the few attacks in the entire game that's neutral damage and not something else specific. And those gemstones / rocks, by the way, I haven't really used them at all so far in this walkthrough. I've talked about them a little bit, but I did show how to get them all. I actually have them all now. The last one was that white gemstone / rock that I got just a little bit ago, and that will unlock that particular triple tech. Now those techs are unlocked automatically as soon as if you have them equipped on the appropriate character and you have the appropriate characters in the party, then you can just use it whenever you want. You don't have to do combat to learn them or anything. But generally speaking, I feel like they're not super worth it. The Master Moon is pretty cool, however, it's just not very practical most of the time, and a lot of the other ones I don't really think are worth it. The main advantage of those gemstone / rock triple techs is the fact that they do really good damage per mana spent. They're very efficient, so they're really good abilities, they're awesome, but generally speaking, for bosses, I don't think it's worthwhile. It's just too risky to have all 3 characters doing that most of the time, and a lot of them are full screen attacks, which honestly doesn't really work, or there's not the right element that you need for that particular boss battle at the end of the game anyways. It's kind of by the time you gain access to the various colored gemstones / rocks, they're not all that useful, has been my personal opinion, and I would rather just do similar damage with 2 characters doing a dual tech and 1 character doing a single tech, because it gives me more flexibility. Rather than waiting for all of their action gauges to fill up at the same time, it just makes more sense to leave them separate so that I have more flexibility, and I think the overall DPS is just better. If I can do similar damage with a dual tech and a single tech, then that's just better in general. It just gives me more flexibility and I can do whatever I want. So as long as I'm using the appropriate team, then it's fine. The only disadvantage of that is the fact that it's really expensive. It costs a lot of MP to do that. But if I have gold studs on my characters instead of that slot that would have been taken up with a gemstone / rock, you know what I mean? I don't know, it just makes more sense to me. So I feel like the base abilities are just better. I will probably show those techs later on in the walkthrough, towards the very end. I'll talk about them for a little bit, but generally speaking, I just don't think they're worth it. One of the things that I love about the DS version that I haven't really had a chance to talk about is when you're swapping your characters back and forth, it shows you what your available dual techs and triple techs are, which is super nice, because if you know what those techs are anyways, just from memory, then you can kind of tell at a glance what each team is capable of. So if you keep swapping your characters back and forth, you can see what options they have available to them. It's just a super nice thing. Now for this battle, I'd recommend you're going to want a dedicated team healer, so ideally either Frog or Robo. And for that purpose, the healing is better if you have more magic stat on Frog. So what I did is I just gave him the Rune Blade temporarily, so rather than doing damage, it focuses his healing a little bit better because it gives him plus to magic. Then I also gave him a magic ring. Now for Chrono, I'm going to give him a power ring. This will increase the damage of his physical techs, and likewise for Ayla, I gave her a power ring as well, so increase the damage of her techs. Now alternatively for her in particular, she could use some more magic defense, would make her a little bit more survivable, so an alternative to this would be to wear like Flea's Bustier or the barrier/wall ring would help quite a bit. Otherwise though too, another really good item for all these characters would be like the prism spectacles. I'm trying to show right now the file I'm using in this is actually lower tier and I don't have all the maxed end equipment. If you do have max equipment, like honestly, all the Zeal fight stuff does like no damage to you at all. Like yes, halation is awful, but you can counter it pretty easily anyways, but all the attacks do like nothing. They do nothing at all. It's just so easy, so it's not even really worth showing. Maybe I'll show like a late game fight with her, just so you can see what I mean. So I'll show like a fight hard mode and I'll show a fight easy mode, and so you can see the difference. Basically for the Black Omen, you want to be at least level 50, if not like in the mid 50s would be pretty good. It's kind of where you want to be. So I'm 10 levels lower than that. So this is like not ideal where I currently am, I guess. So next what I'm going to do, by the way, before we go in there, I would recommend you put speed on all of the characters you're going to use for the whatever team you're going to use for that. You want to use up some of those speed capsules that we charmed all the way here, because that would make this fight significantly easier. And next I'm going to go ahead and throw a bunch of magic on Ayla, because this will greatly increase her healing. If you're using Slurp Kiss, the healing on that is purely based off of Ayla's magic stat, and so that is a really good dual tech between her and Frog, and as long as she has 35 healing, it will max heal your whole party, which is great. Something else super useful is you get a whole bunch of shield spheres and barrier spheres throughout the Black Omen. I actually didn't realize you could get these here. Just a lot of the enemies will drop these when they die. Those are a super useful item in general, but in particular for these final fights in the game. So if you're struggling with this, as long as you can get past the initial wave of stuff, then you can immediately follow up with some shield spheres and barrier spheres, and that will allow you to survive really easily. Now in this next room, you will then see a whole bunch of like glass canisters that have one of each one of our characters. Queen Zeal makes some disturbing comments. She makes it sound like we are the ones that are actually sleeping. They're not like clones or anything, it's us from the future, which is disturbing. Like somehow they gathered us at some point in history later on and then kept us here as pets or something. I don't even understand what this means, but it's kind of a disturbing realization. But anyways, next you want to go forward and speak with Queen Zeal, and after taunting us for a little bit, then it will initiate the combat with her. So here we actually have 3 fights in a row in which we cannot change our characters, so whatever you decide for this is going to be, you're locked in and you don't have any other choice. One fun team composition you can use is just anybody with Frog, as long as he has the Masamune. Makes the second battle a little bit easier. This first fight is ridiculously easy. All you need to do is just make sure that you stay above 1 HP. She has an ability called Halation, which will then reduce the HP of our whole party down to 1, which is really awful. So it's like the new attack, except worse. And otherwise, you just need to do damage to her. She actually does not have that much health, and she has no special resistances, so just hit her really hard and you're good to go. The only thing you want to watch out for is you just want to make sure that you can use full party heals to heal everybody. Now, one thing you can use to take advantage of this too is that both Frog and Ayla have an ability that will do damage based upon their HP. So Frog has Frog Squash and Ayla has Dino Tail. These are single techs you can use, although there is also some dual techs like Frog Flare as well as the Master Moon, which will do even more damage. And I'll show that here in a little bit, but those are some even more damaging attacks. There's no particular reason to use them, although this is one of the few points in the game where it's practical to do so. Now, in my experience, Queen Zeal will use Halation 2 times in a row, so we have a little bit of time before she's going to actually unleash some other attack. But basically, her other abilities are just to absorb some MP, just to be a jerk, and then otherwise she has a physical damage attack that does not very much physical. It's not even all that bad. Even a single Lapis will be more than enough to make sure that you survive. One other fun fact about this boss is you can charm her multiple times. As far as I know, this is the only boss in the entire game that can be charmed repeatedly, but she has a Mega Elixir each time you charm her, and she also will give you a Mega Elixir when defeated as well. So she has 3 total you can get from her, 2 for charming her twice, and then 1 for defeating her. Now, real quick before we move on, I will show this is the other playthrough where I had the overpowered characters, and I'm going to wear the Golden Gemstone, otherwise known as the Gold Rock, on Frog. This unlocks the ability to use the Master Moon, aka Grand Dream, triple tech, which is the exact same thing as the Frog Squash ability. It just does significantly more damage and requires Robo, Marl, and Frog. So yeah, Frog is the one who has to have the accessory equipped on him, and then unlocks this ability for these 3 characters. It does significantly more damage than the other ability, and just hits really, really hard. However, it's based upon the remaining HP of all 3 of your characters. So you need all 3 of them to be very low. Now luckily this boss just happens to be generous enough by giving us 1 HP for all of us, so it's kind of a fun way to destroy this boss like crazy. This ability is like not practical for most of the game, but for this boss it's awesome. Now I realize in both those cases I used halation strategies in order to defeat her, but it works the exact same way otherwise. If you're worried about dying to her, just make sure you use a Lapis or Star Heal or Heal Beam or Slurp Kiss or whatever. There's a bunch of different options, or Lapis, yeah. So Lapis, anybody can use them, so don't worry about it too much. You can bring kind of whatever team composition you want, but you're going to want a whole bunch of healers just in general for these upcoming fights, because there is a lot of attacks that will take you down to 1 HP. Now, if that all kind of freaks you out or you don't want to do something funky, then here's a more traditional battle. I'm going to be healing my characters just to keep them above 1 HP to be a little bit more on the safe side in case Zeal uses her Energy Spheres ability instead. So what I'm doing is I'm going to be using Heal Beam with Robo to keep everybody up, and then otherwise I'm going to be charming her to get those Mega Elixirs from her, because yummy. And then I'm going to be using Beast Toss between Ayla and Robo. And I think both these characters, I think in this recording, I don't really remember, I think I put the Prism Spectacles on them so that they did even more damage with this ability. Now, because of this, though, unfortunately, this boss will just constantly use Halation, which makes it really difficult to use Crisis Arm for a couple of these different battles for Zeal. So instead, I just recommend you don't even bother using the Crisis Arm. So instead, I have, I think the Dragon Arm, actually, is what I have on Robo, I think. Or maybe not, maybe I decided I was going to heal him with Robo, or with Marl, so I could guarantee that he's doing the good damage. But anyways, as you can see, it just demolishes her and she dies right away. So next, Queen Zeal will then merge with the Mammon Machine, and with their powers combined, we will have to defeat them. So this is actually pretty easy. The first thing to know is just that the boss has 2 phases. One is a charging phase, in which attacking it will increase its damage, and then the other phase is its attacking phase, so it just alternates back and forth. It always starts in the charging phase, and how it works is it does different things depending on what you use against it. So if you use magic, then it cuts all the way through everything, and it increases its damage. If you use physical, it will decrease its attack, and it will increase its defenses, and then eventually it'll unleash it all. So what you want to do is, if you keep using physical, what'll happen is you'll reduce the damage that you take when it finally unleashes, although it is storing energy based upon the amount of damage you dealt. So just hitting it with physical is pretty easy. If you hit it with magic, it will also increase the damage that eventually it unleashes. But as long as you have enough healing to survive it, it's not too bad. Even if you hit it like crazy, I think at most it only does like around 400 at most, even if like worst case scenario. So you should have way more than enough health to survive that. So as long as you healed up after the Queen Zeal battle, it shouldn't be a problem at all. Just generally speaking, just so you know, a lot of dual techs will do a hybrid of physical and magical damage. So if you use like Ice Sword 2, for example, then half of that damage comes from Chrono, which is physical, and half the damage comes from Marl, which is magical. So if you attack with physical first, and then you use Ice Sword will cause because it's an elemental attack, it'll cause the magic sacrifice to increase attack ability. So, but the half of the damage will be reduced because you already used a bunch of physical to increase its defense. Make sense? So if you're going to use elemental attacks, or use Luminaire or something like that, you're better off doing it at the earlier portions of the charging phase. So you want to use magic, physical is what you want to do to reduce the damage that it does before it unleashes. Now it's sort of weird because using physical will reduce the damage it does, but it also increases the damage because it's charging more. You know what I mean? Its damage status going down, but the total amount of damage stored is going up. So it's sort of this weird thing. But yeah, the short answer to all that is elemental, dual techs, or single techs, followed by physical damage is what you want to do during charge phase. Just make sure you heal in between as well so that you are full health, so that when it does unleash, you don't have to worry about it. When it uses that little icon or whatever where it says standing still, that means it'll just occasionally use point flare on somebody. You could potentially wear red plates as well, but I think that black plates are better for the next phase. It's just significantly stronger because it'll help you survive. By the way, as far as the attacks work, it's very similar to the Nizbel 2 damage that he would release with this electric attack, where if you kept using damage on him, then it would boost the damage over time. So it works very similar to that, where if you use a magic attack on this boss, it will increase the damage of the release damage by a set amount, or like a set percentage. So it goes from, say it's doing 100% damage, now it's doing 130% damage, now it's doing 190% damage, now it's doing 280% damage, whatever it is. So it goes up exponentially each time you do it, based upon the attack. Not based upon the amount of damage you do, but based upon how many times you attacked it. So it's not based on how much damage you do, so using dual techs or triple techs is just better overall. The reason for this is because it won't charge up as much, but just so you know, even if you do use hard elemental with every single character with single tech, so you're attacking as often as possible and you charge it up as much as it possibly can, and you're increasing its attack like crazy, it's still probably not going to do enough damage to kill you. As long as you full heal in between all its nasty waves, you're totally fine. Even with low-level characters, it doesn't matter. So really, this boss is not very scary at all. That's all you really need to know. Heal up, attack it. Now, you can use just straight-up physical like I am for this fight, and it's fine. It's just a little bit more drawn out. But otherwise, if you use hard magic or hard magic hybrid, like, again, Ice Sword as an example, is you'll do half physical, half magical, but because it's an elemental attack, it will increase his attack and not his defenses. So you'll do 100% full damage all the time. So yeah, I just recommend that. Just use anything elemental, you're good to go. So I'm going to show this fight one more time, this time showing the Master Moon route because it's just kind of cool. You don't have to do this. In fact, I don't necessarily think this is ideal because we're doing physical damage and thus we're increasing its defenses, but it is still just a fun thing. This is like one of the only places in the game you can even do this. So the funny thing is, after the Queen Zeal fight, you're probably still at 1 HP, and so as a result, you can still do good damage with this ability. Of course, because it's a pure physical ability, it's going to be increasing its defense exponentially, so that does get kind of awful. Exponentially? What? Detrimental returns. Detrimental returns on our damage. I don't know, however you want to phrase that. Regardless, the damage goes down. One thing I'm not entirely sure on is I know that it's based on the amount of HP we have missing, but I'm not sure if it's a numerical value or if it's based upon percentage. So if we're down to 1 HP, I don't know if it's the same damage at lower levels versus higher levels. So if we had, 700 to 600 HP total for each character, I don't know if it would do less damage at that point. I assume so, because that would kind of balance it so that it's really good by the end of the game. One other little fun nuance to notice about this, you might have noticed that behind Queen Zeal, that the Mammon Machine looked like it was just a bunch of ruins or something like that. It was crumbled to pieces, and this is actually a reference to the fact that we destroyed the Mammon Machine earlier. If you remember, like back when we saw the Mammon Machine in the Ocean Palace, we threw the ruby knife at it, and it charged up and became the Masamune. Now, Frog actually has the Masamune in his possession, so you can actually use it to just do regular attacks against the Masamune, and it will actually do extra things to it. It absorbs the energy from it. I think what this does is it actually neutralizes all the buffs that the boss has acquired, and it reduces its defense, which is really cool. It also heals Frog for a set amount as well, which is pretty cool, and so that's just one little nuance. It doesn't really matter too much. It's not a super helpful strategy, but it is really neat to note. If you remember, too, the entire purpose of why the ruby knife was crafted in the first place, the whole reason the Masamune even exists, is because it's for the entire purpose of destroying the Mammon Machine. That was what it was built for. So the fact that, Queen Zeal merged with the Mammon Machine, we do additional damage with it, is just, so cool. Such a sweet little attention to detail. It makes me happy. So next we'll find ourselves transported to the top, on top of the Black Omen itself, and the perspective always looks kind of strange to me. It looks like the Black Omen is super small and we're like giants compared to it by perspective, so it looks kind of strange. We're also in space, which I'm not really sure how we're breathing, but anyways, I like all the moving parts though. It looks really cool. So I don't know, I just think this whole scene is really pretty. Now, one of the first things you're going to want to do is charm Zeal. So just like the previous two fights, you can charm her to get a Mega Elixir, as well as the Mammon Machine, etc. We charmed all those to get Mega Elixirs as well. But the interesting thing for this fight is you can also charm the hands, and each one charms for something different. So you can get a Prismatic Dress and a Prismatic Helm, both of which are very rare items that are super valuable. In particular, the Prismatic Dress, it's like best in slot for all the girls, except for the Elemental Aegis for Luca, but we'll be getting that later on in this walkthrough. But so it's just a really good chess piece for the girls, super valuable. I actually do have several of them because I got them in the Arena of Ages, but that's unusual and unlikely that most of you have that option. But just make sure you charm these things. Just so you know, too, the two hands, the charmables for them are swapped between the DS version and the Super Nintendo version. I don't know why. So the left one gives you one prize, and the Super Nintendo version it gives you the other one. It's the right one that does the same one instead. But it doesn't really matter. Regardless, you want to get both of them because they're both super good. Now, be warned that the hands themselves, if you do anything to them, they have a pretty nasty counterattack. The one hand will reduce your HP to 1, and the other hand will reduce your MP to 0. So what you want to do is just be ready to either heal or use an ether on Ayla as soon as you do something to each one of the hands. Now, because of this nasty counter, you really just don't want to use attacks that hit the whole screen because you'll just end up killing yourself. Instead, what you want to do is you want to single target the face down because then you can, that's all that we need to do in order to win. We don't have to kill the hands at all. All that matters is once the head is dead, then we win. So you want to attack the face by using really hard-hitting single-target attacks. Now, generally speaking, most of the really good single-target attacks in the game are all physical, just so you know. So, Luca and Marl aren't really super ideal for this fight. You're better off using some of the guys, basically, and then Ayla as well. So just any kind of physical damage dealer would be better. So Chrono, Ayla, Robo, and Frog would be the best characters to use for this. Now, ideally, you're using dual text or triple text for this, although Rapid Fire Fist, especially in combination with the Crisis Arm can be really, really strong against this boss. It does make things a little bit awkward because the Mammon Machine battle, like, ideally you're not using physical. It's okay, as you saw though, you can't really die against the Mammon Machine as long as you have some healing and you just full heal your party in between its massive attacks. Like, it takes so long for it to charge up, you can easily heal your party, and then you'll survive its attack no matter what attacks you use it. Even if you increase its damage like crazy, you're not going to die to it. So anyways, the Mammon Machine is not a threat, so even though physical is not the most ideal thing for the Mammon Machine because your damage keeps going down over time, it's still, like, safer because you really, really want physical for this boss because it's just the best way to do it. If you're using magic for this fight, it's like a little bit rough and you'll probably end up killing yourself. One interesting thing to point out is that this boss has a Starburst / Hexagon Mist, which is a pretty nasty attack that's half water, half physical, which most of the attacks in the game are not like that. But one of the things that's funny about that is because half of it is physical, you can greatly reduce the damage of that particular attack by, even though it's like one of the nastiest abilities that this boss has, because it's a physical type, if you have a physical team, like I do right now, like I was saying, physical attacks are basically the best thing you want to use against this boss because that's what you need to fight the face. So if you're wanting to use physical attacks, then physical damage dealers typically have more stamina / vigor, and as a result they don't take as much damage from physical attacks in general. So using a physical team means you don't take as much damage from the water attack. And you can also reduce that damage a little bit further too if you're worried about it by putting on the mermaid helm on one of your characters as well. So that would be another way to do this really good. I think overall the haste helm is fine though. As long as you're not taking too much damage, it's fine. So I think overall as far as armor, you're better off with like the white plate and black plate. Because you can reduce damage a lot. I think the black plate overall is more useful because both of the hands have attacks that use shadow. So if you have 3 different shadow attacks for this particular boss, so black plate will absorb a lot of the damage this boss can possibly deal. He does have Heavenly Gate / Skygate as well, but that's kind of rough, and that can be negated with white plate as well as the Radiant Helm as well. But that's not really too bad. But like I was saying earlier, Starburst / Hexagon Mist is one of the nastiest abilities this boss has. However, because half of it is physical, if you have physical damage dealers, they also have really high defenses against that. So that particular attack is not as nasty at that point. So yeah, I know that's kind of complicated, but that all being said, by using physical damage dealers, you also take reduced damage from physical, and as a result, Starburst / Hexagon Mist, which is one of the nastiest abilities this boss has, actually doesn't even hurt that much. You can wear Mermaid Helm to reduce that even further. But otherwise, Shadow Gear is definitely what's better, because you'll reduce more total damage just in general. So like, a black plate on Ayla, and then, you can put dark helms on some of the other guys or whatever to reduce the damage further. Mermaid helm if you're feeling extra spicy, but, it's fine. So that'll help quite a bit. Now, as far as healing, you're definitely going to need some healing, especially to counter halation. And the best ability for that by far, in my opinion, is going to be Slurp Kiss between Ayla and Frog. Give her just a little bit of magic stat, and it makes that ability super nice. You can full heal from all the way down from 1 HP. You can heal all the way to full, your whole party, very quickly. It's very easy to do that. Super good ability. Now, otherwise, the next best healer, or maybe the best, depending on how much magic you can give him, is if you toss all of your magic capsules / tabs in the entire game on Robo, then at this point, his healing is amazing. He can full heal the entire party with just Heal Beam by itself, which is crazy. Now, in this particular recording, he's not super maxed out or anything, but it still heals really, really good. 450 HP is a lot just for one spell that only costs 3 MP. It's pretty darn good. So like I've explained before earlier in this video, is I have 2 playthroughs of this game, so this is my party that's like level 55 or whatever. They're a little much higher, so they have all the really good equipment and everything like that. So Zeal is not doing very much damage to me. In fact, like a lot of these attacks are only doing like 20, which is nothing. So it's kind of hard for me to die to a lot of these things. I will eventually die. It's more like halation is really the scary thing. But my characters though too, because I'm not having like full physical parties, whatever. I need to focus on single target, but these characters don't really have anything super great. I do think I do have the Crisis Arm on Robo, though, so like he can do really good with like Rapid Fire Fist, for example. I just have to make sure that he's healed so that he has 999 HP, so that he hits for his max amount. So I figured I'd show this for 2 reasons. Like, just note that my characters are like 10 levels higher, like significantly stronger, and I'm not taking any damage from anything at all, but at the same time, I am like, it's taking me a lot longer to kill her. Like, even though I do more damage, I just don't really have ideal techs for this. So this is a very safe team composition. It's pretty good to go, but it does take a long time. One of the things I probably should have done differently for this fight, though, too, is I should have just gone ahead and used haste with Marl. I didn't actually do that for this fight at all, but I think I was just feeling lazy, but that would be something that would help and improve my damage quite a bit. Now here in a little bit, I get into this scary position where I have, like, all my characters have 1 HP, Robo loses all of his MP, and Marl is dead, so it's just like this really rough situation. So what I ended up doing is I used Frog to res Marl, and then I immediately used a Mega Elixir with Robo because he was out of MP anyways. So I had to do something like that just to survive. But Mega Elixirs are amazing, and I've been encouraging you to charm them throughout the walkthrough because they're just so useful. Any character can use them, so technically you can do these last fights and just use a whole bunch of Mega Elixirs, although they are kind of a pain to farm. You can definitely do it that way. You can also purchase them from the Lost Sanctum after you complete that, although that is only available in like the DS and like Steam versions of the game. Now, as a quick comment, this playthrough is also the one where I did the Master Moon triple tech for the last 2 fights, so that's this same recording that you're watching right now. And I can use that for this fight as well, but it's kind of suicidal because what happens is that causes the counterattacks with the other 2 hands as well, which you're already at 1 HP, so getting 1 HP again from the one hand doesn't really matter. Getting the other hand reduce your MP to 0 isn't the end of the world, but it's like okay. But you're pretty much in this position where you're absolutely forced to use like a Mega Elixir after that, but also because you have to wait a whole nother turn, you'll probably die in the meantime. Like, you saw how scary that was when Marl was downed, so you can get into that position repeatedly if you're trying to use Master Moon or, you know, Frog Flare or any of those kind of things. It just kind of gets really, really rough. So I just recommend you don't do it. Single targeting the face is the way to go for this fight. So yeah, primary things you need to know for all of the Zeal fights is ideally single target damage. Doesn't have to be physical, but that's pretty much your best bet, generally speaking. And then you need some way to counter halation, whether you're using items with like either just like a couple lapises can probably do it, otherwise like Slurp Kiss or Heal Beam or something like that. You need some kind of full party heal that's really, really good to counter that. Now, once you finally defeated Zeal, also just make sure that you charm her hands in particular, ideally. Really want that prismatic dress, super, super important. Now, after you've done that, then the Black Omen will actually be destroyed, and this will initiate some of the Lavos fights. Now, you can actually approach the Lavos fights from a couple different ways. There's a couple different ways to get there, and the Black Omen is just one of those methods. So I'm actually going to end this video here, even though I realize it's kind of an odd place because here we have more boss battles immediately after this, but it's because you can fight Lavos from different directions and stuff. So I'm actually going to include that in the next video. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this and found it helpful, be sure to throw a like on it, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content just like this. As always, stay awesome, have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll tackle the final boss of the game.